I know it's been too long, but welcome back to another edition of Bourbon, Buites Business. Please remember our disclaimer: opinions expressed on Bourbon, Buites Business are those of the individual speakers only and should not be relied upon as legal, business, or marketing advice. This is going to be a little bit of a different podcast today. I guess our videographer and overall marketing guru, Quentin Day, is going to be asking me some questions.
Yes, sir.
It's kind of a market update, an end of the year update, and what we see going on in the future. So the other voice you'll hear is Quentin Day from Rook Media.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. So you ready for me to tear into it?
Go right ahead.
So, we've been watching Facebook, the news, everything's all pointed in one direction. What is going to happen with the market? What's going to happen with the real estate market? Are we all going to fall into an apocalypse here soon? Or are we going to make it through this? I know you've been doing this for 30 plus years. Is that what it was? Or?
Well, kind of 21 years as a broker, 10 years, 16 years in the mobile home business.
All right. Yeah. So you know real estate ins and outs. You've seen it go up and down. So what's your predictions? What's going to happen right now?
So there's a lot of we'll start with social media. Kind of an overall. This is kind of a big subject thing. Unfortunately, you're seeing the market in a state of flux at the moment. We have a problem with an industry that is doing its job the best it can to hold up the industry for the agents and for the mortgage people. But when they do that, you have a lot of what I think is misleading information in such a way that it gives an over-optimistic view of things. I'm not crying doom and gloom at the moment, and this podcast might sound like things are going bad. However, if you've listened to any of my podcasts or read anything I post on social media, we've been preparing for this moment for a few years now. One of the dangers of a market being in flux is you have a lot of people taking data and looking at that data in a vacuum and not looking at overall trends. So what's happening is you have people going, hey, look at this data. Things are really okay. A good example of that is a couple of different brokers. I'll give you my point of view of a piece of data and another broker's point of view is a piece of data that I've seen out there.
Okay.
In November, I think it was October or November. It was October numbers. October numbers came out for home sales. It basically said there was slightly less inventory. Days on market was up slightly, but overall prices were still higher than last year. I've also seen another piece of data where somebody said we've had more foreclosures in the last year than we have record-setting foreclosures, but it's still less than it was in 2013 or whatever it was when things were really bad. Okay, so that one specific piece of data of either one of those pieces of data are really meaningless by themselves. Right. What you have to look at is trends. What is happening over a period of time? And can we compare this to the last recession? That's really hard to do because the trends are, you can see the trend that things are clearly going down. Days on market is going up. The overall market price, it's higher than it was last year, only because you didn't see the giant increase in price until the first 6 months of 2022. That's when things really went crazy.
Yeah.
So when you have numbers get so far overinflated, the fact that they're higher now than they were a year ago, they should be, because they're still overinflated.
Right.
That will come down. As interest rates continue to go up, that will come down. Interest rates are going to continue to go up because the Fed's going to want them to go up. Anybody that knows that, Econ 101 says you need your mortgage interest rates to be at about 8% in order for the economy to work better. GDP needs to be 4 to 5%. We have operated on a very weak economy for the last 10 plus years since the last recession.
When was the last time it was at 8%?
2008.
Really?
Yeah.
And before that occurred, like you're saying that's the norm. 8% should be the norm to keep the economy correct.
Yeah. So if
we ever maintain that?
The Reagan recovery,
Yeah.
through the better part of the 90s, Clinton did it.
So why are people freaking out now when we're still below that number? They got too used to the 3.5s and all that nice stuff?
Yeah, you got too used to a low interest rate. And what you should expect to see is an overswing, because if the government's involved in anything, there's always an overswing. Like, the government always overreacts and then comes back down to some semblance of normalcy. Look what they did with gas prices. Gas went over $5 a gallon here in this market in the Northern Kentucky, Greater Cincinnati area. In other markets, obviously, it was much higher. Now gas prices are $2.99, $3, and people are thrilled.
Right.
Well, it was $2. What happened? Why are we okay with it at $3 if we were happy at $2?
Yeah.
Like,
I remember when I was a kid, 75 cents up at Speedway up on 18.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're going to have inflation, but some of that was caused by the administration. I put out a paper in 2019 that basically said we were going to go into a recession in 21 that would really be hurting in 22. COVID delayed everything by a year, so everything's happening just like I thought with the COVID delay. But even when I wrote that paper, that was in the heat of the election cycle going into the 2020 election. And I said, it doesn't matter who gets elected president. The recession is happening. Nobody could stop it. The only thing that's important is how the administration responds.
So you knew this back then?
Yeah.
What gave you those indicators?
I did. So because I was around for the last recession and it was so hard and I barely made it.
Yeah. And
a lot of brokers didn't make it. I mean, there were literally brokers working the drive-through at McDonald's.
Right.
I did a month-to-month comparison for 10 years from the start of the last recession to July of 2019. Well, June of 2019.
Yeah.
So we basically went from June of 2008 to June of 2019, and I basically had this, well, I still have it, a chart that shows where the Dow Jones Industrial was on the average on a monthly basis, month to month. I think I picked a date in the middle of the month. But where things were month to month, comparing the trend for a 10-year period. So comparing everything for the 11-year period and kind of seeing, and then when I took that data, I compared it to what regulations were put into place and what kind of things the government was doing and the Fed was doing to affect the stock market to see where the anomaly was. There's always an anomaly somewhere. So, and you could kind of see, the economy happens in cycles. We just got too fat, and things were building up then to where, look, we should be coming back down, and things were perfectly lined up for it to happen. And then COVID hit, and they threw more money at us, which makes the coming recession worse than it should have been. But backing up to that part, one of the things and we've seen this, COVID was kind of my proofing ground, if you will. March 16th of, was that 2020, when they shut down the world? That week, something significant happened with the Dow, and I'll kind of go back to it. When I put out the paper in July of 18, I said there's 8,000 points baked into the Dow Jones. And because there was the government had not done anything, whether it was Bush or Obama, neither one of them had done anything when everything tanked in 2009, when things really got bad. There were no regulations put in place. There was nothing. No orders, no nothing, no money, nothing. It was literally presidents standing up there going, it's going to be okay.
Just let us